What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video today. I'm recording this on Thursday morning. Things were crazy yesterday in Rostermania. We finally got some news on who the next fourth is going to be for FaZe. It's obvious cascades for Optic because they were considering the same player. So now we're going to discuss as well who Optic may pick up. So let's talk about Scrappy, Drazah, Dante, Brad. We're going to talk about it all right now. Let's dive in on the news from yesterday. I was mid-podcast when this broke. If you haven't checked out the new episode of Scrap Time with special guest Kenny, we'll link that in the description below. It was our best episode. Me, Chris, and Ken had a fun time breaking down news and reacting to some of the stuff live. But first, I had the Jacob Hale tweet with two updates on the FaZe situation. They wanted Scrappy, but conversations never went as far as negotiating a buyout with Ultra seems fair. Toronto was never really going to sell Scrappy. Maybe in 2 or 3 months of Scrappy kind of sitting his butt on the bench and, you know, making a whole transfer saga. But it was always going to be tough and cost a lot of money. And then basically, Drazah's got to pick between FaZe and Optic. And, you know, if you're on FaZe, I think that's your best chance to win. I know some Optic fans are going to disagree. They're going to say, oh, well, they're the same number of championships in the last 2 years. I just think you look at the full history of CDL, the full history of the FaZe team, and they've got more of a winning pedigree than Optic, which has gone through a lot of changes recently. Like that, I think that's just fact. But as far as brand growth, clout, like creating a career outside of the competitive thing, I think Optic's really always going to be the best option. The fan base is big. You stream, you blow up, you create content, you do brand deals. Like Optic's going to be best for your personal business. But if you're about pure winning, it's going to be FaZe, and that's the decision that Drazah had to make. Which it seems like he chose winning because Jacob Hale, about an hour later, posted an article. Sources: Drazah opts to join Atlanta FaZe over Optic Texas for the CDL 2024 season. And I mean, Jay kind of gets into it. That there are, you know, kind of maybe some of the thought process here. I think the biggest thing is that he was linked alongside Optic, was going to join with Pred, and now Optic needs to go in a different role. First off, for FaZe, I really like this pickup. It moves MC to a main AR, which I think will kind of suit his pace a little bit better. You know Drazah's going to play a fast flex. You know Drazah is going to be nasty in search. You know Drazah is going to be passionate in scrims. For me, this makes a lot of sense on like the core values that Atlanta FaZe has, that the coaching staff sets for the team, that the players expect from everybody else on the team. I think Austin filled those roles well. I just don't think Austin was a quick enough player, and they had too many ARs. I don't think if I talk to any FaZe players, going to say anything bad about Austin. This is a similar type of player, just a little bit quicker and a more of a flex type player. And so I really like this move for FaZe. I think this is going to continue to make them a top team. And I'm excited to see Drazah in Atlanta FaZe lineup. Now, keep in mind, they did have some beef. Those two teams, rather Drazah and the Atlanta FaZe players, last couple of years, they're going to have to patch some of that up. It's really funny to laugh about now. I also think that this Atlanta FaZe team is going to get booed at pretty much every event next year. I mean, I know K-Son's probably going to see this video and disagree, but bro, they're like the Drazah chants are going to come back at every event. The people are going to boo this team a lot, and they're going to be kind of the villains of the CDL. So that'll be fun to watch. All right, so what does this mean for Optic Texas? So I think Pred is pretty much a lock to be on this roster. I think barring some colossal 11th hour breakdown, he's going to be joining. So they have two fantastic all-star sub players. I'm sorry, Pat. Shotzi's an all-star. He just had a rough-ish season by his standards last year, but he's an all-star and Dashy. So they need likely a flex player. I don't think you're going to move Ant to a flex. I think you're getting a flex player who can play alongside these players. So let's take a look at some options on the list. I like this. This is outside the box, but we're going to go right off the riff. I like Envoy. Now, here's the thing with Envoy. It seems like he's committed to Toronto, but I don't know, and I don't think he's signed a new deal yet. So I think there's an option to 11th hour steal Envoy if you want to go down that route. He's obviously been on Optic before. I think he can run a flex like really, really well. I think he can run an AR really well. So I like that as sort of an outside the box thing, but he might be sort of impossible to get based on the fact that he's committed to Toronto. I think Kenny's an interesting one. You know, we did a podcast with Ken yesterday, and he said he's open to running an AR. Obviously, he broke into the Call of Duty scene in AW running an AR, so you know he can run that. I mean, he ran a sub because he needed to on TK back in the day in World War II when he came back after being not age eligible for a while. So I think Ken can run an AR well. He's good vibes. He's going to go hard. I've heard he's amazing in practice. So Kenny would be a really good pickup for the squad if they want to go down that route. I don't think they're going to pick up Bender again. I think they've moved on from that. I know some fans may want that for sentimental reasons, but I just think that time is kind of past that option. I have kids crossed out here because I think he's committed to New York, but I don't know what's going on with the New York contract situation. I don't know if kids have signed a new deal yet. Maybe you try to ninja him 11th hour. I don't know. That would be kind of cool. and interesting. He obviously just won a chip, but I just don't see New York breaking apart. I think Mac, maybe a couple of years ago, pre-Seattle Surge, would have been a very interesting flex option for this team. But I think they need someone with a little bit more map presence, a little bit more comms. And Mac also hasn't had the best like year and a half for Seattle. So I just don't think that that's an option they're really going to consider. And then we get to, I think, probably one of the front runners. It's probably Sib, aka Dante. He had a great couple of years on Seattle. They obviously won last year. This year, a little bit iffy, but you know, he's a very talented player. Supreme Gunny, a lot like Bruce. You watch his centering and it's just elite. He can snipe and search. He can definitely run a sub as well, so you don't need to be worried about if it becomes a 3-sub game. Now, Dante is, I wouldn't say very much similar to Dan in terms of being an in-game leader, calling spawns, all that. It's going to be more of something that him and Bruce are going to need to feel out and get better at. My only other concern with Dante as well is, you know, the S&D wasn't great for Seattle, but I can't tell if it's because they're just a bad search team. Like, I don't know if he's a good or a bad player in S&D individually, because Seattle's has been so like bang on average to below average in S&D for like 2 years. So we'll see on that. But I think in terms of pure ceiling, he's like got to be a front runner for getting on this team. Now we're getting some interesting options. Donnie Temp, Optic Don, man, that would be insane, right? I have talked to some of his former players, or rather former teammates recently, and they've been gassing up the strides that Donnie's taken this year as a teammate, kind of really accepting how to play the right style of Call of Duty. I just don't know if Optics can go down that route, but man, the content with Don, I just feel like it'd be a very interesting decision. I just feel like if Dante's out there, though, you probably still take him over Temp, but I really like this down the road, the Temp thing. There's going to be some fans that want Optic Clayster. I just don't see Bruce and Clay on the same team. If you're a 3-sub game, it's going to be not what you want. I would think bringing Clay back to Optic at the tail end of his career would be a really cool move for a lot of different reasons. You know, for those who maybe just started watching or newer, like Clay was on Optic a long time ago. So in Ghost. So I think this would be cool, but I just don't see it happening. All right, we're going to get to a few more options here. Big Wake. I like Big Wake's skill. I just don't like him paired with potentially this squad. I think it's another Kyler situation where you're going to have to kind of work around his playstyle. So as much as I like Big Wake, I just don't think the Optics can go down that route. Now, here's a very interesting one. Preston, aka Priesta. I really like Preston. I know the New York contract situation is supposedly a little murky right now. The rotation tweeted that apparently he's getting hoed. I don't know what that means. But if Preston wants to entertain another offer and go to Optic, that's perfectly who they need. Someone who's selfless, going to be good in search. He's going to adhere to the team system. He's going to be active in comms. He'd be a great add to Optic. I kind of skipped over Slasher. Again, 2 main ARs. I just don't see it for Optic. As good as I think Austin is, and I thought he had a great season this year, I just don't see him being a realistic option for Optic, considering they want to pick someone who's going to be a really good 3rd sub if they need it. And speaking of that might be Cammy. That'd be a very interesting route if they go down there. I don't know if Cam had a great season enough to get on Optic, though. Maybe last year when he's rumored to join this roster, it would have made sense. I don't think right now, so we're going to go ahead and move on that one. We have Big Cap, aka Capsule. I really like Cap. He's a super raw player, though. Still needs a lot of work. I just don't see Optic being signed up for that project. As much as I think Capsule is good, and I think going to get on a CDL roster this year and continue to develop, I just don't know if Optic wants that type of player right now. And then, of course, you have the run back with Dan Ghosty. That could be pretty interesting. I think that's got to be a consideration for Optic. You know, you played pretty good with Dan. You got a couple of runners up. You know what he brings to the team. It's positive. That being said, Optic's record on dropping players recently and picking them back up, not that great. So if you go down that route, the chemistry better be there, or it's going to be another situation like last year where you're like, well, we should have made a change in the offseason. Finally, and this is not listed, but I'm going to put this out there because I think it's an interesting option. It's the last option, I think, on the list. I would not be surprised, considering the state of Halo, if Formal retired from Halo and came back to Call of Duty. I think it's the only way they would pick up 2 main ARs if Formal joined the team. I just don't see it. I don't. Matt has to commit 100% to COD and that grind, and he seems to be really passionate about Halo. But Bruce is like his OG best friend, and they have a roster spot. And maybe you know, I don't know the Halo situation for next year, but if it's murky, I could see him switching. That's a super outside the box idea, but that's the only like non-COD option I can think of. So that's what Optic is kind of considering. My guess is either Dan or Dante is probably who they're going to pick up, but we will see when news breaks what happens, and we'll also cover it live on this channel once it does. So let me know in the comments what you guys thought of the video. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more fun day of Rostermania. And as always, guys, we will see you on the next video.